Welcome to Our Story, the podcast. Every month, Pastor Mark from Harmony-Toluca Lake sits down with a guest to discuss their journey of faith from an inclusive, affirming point of view. These personal stories are part of a colorful tapestry of individual life experiences that transcend the boundaries of church by connecting us all together collectively through faith, hope, and love. This is Our Story.
Hey everyone, Pastor Mark here with Harmony-Toluca Lake. And this is an affirming faith community and the second campus of Hollywood United Methodist Church. And I have the joy of being with Joy Min, one of Harmony's members here at the Toluca Lake campus. And we are having an Our Story conversation that is now on the podcast. And Joy, it's always great to be hanging out with you. And so how are you today?
Good. Happy to be here. Thank you. And how are you, Pastor Mark?
Hey, I live in paradise. What can I say? So, got an opening question for you. Let's see where this goes. So, I love to binge watch whenever I have time, Netflix, Hulu, wherever it may be. Is there a show that you've recently watched that you could recommend to me to watch?
Oh, yeah, for sure. One that I really enjoyed and that was very different from other series I've watched is Beef. And I know being Asian American, it's like, well, yeah, but it's actually like really, really good. And so far we've had, just the representation in the media has been amazing. And Beef, I just want to highlight, it focuses on like Los Angeles and Orange County, which is like where we are. And it's so crazy because like Steven Yeun, like there's like a lot of scenes where he's in a church, and it's like a small Korean immigrant church, and it's like one that I grew up in, and like when I watch those scenes, it's like just the memories like flooding back, and just the connection I have with it. I'm just like, whoa. So if you wanted to see for yourself like what it was like for a lot of us growing up, like highly recommend.
Perfect. Thank you for the recommendation, adding it onto the my list, right? So I can't wait. So you have a phenomenal family.
Kind.
So husband, 2 children. What are the ages now?
Wesley is 5.5 and Eleanor just turned 4.
Yes, Eleanor had a great birthday trip just a couple of weeks ago. So but outside of the family, because I know the family brings you much joy, but outside of the family, what brings you joy?
My career choice brings me joy. So I am an educator, teacher. I was a high school math teacher for many years. I still consider myself one, but I'm taking on a new position with a program called Intro to Data Science. And so just all of that math, data science, helping students become problem solvers, critical thinkers, like that excites me, brings me lots of joy when students have aha moments or just being able to like connect with them on a deeper level. Like all of that brings me joy.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of things bring me joy. Even just like hobbies. I love to hike. I love being outdoors, the beach, the mountains, camping. Little things bring me joy all the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems like that would be a key element in a way, of happiness, right? Is finding the little things. It doesn't have to be a big thing, does it?
No, at all. It's funny because my name is Joy, and I feel like I actually do embody that, that my mom had aptly named me Joy. Yeah.
Well, it's a way of looking at God and living our lives, that it doesn't have to be some grand, massive thing that has popped up, right?
Mm-hmm. And it usually is in those quiet, small moments where I'm able to like thank God for those things. Sometimes when it's like too much emotion, you forget. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's in those quiet moments.
So how long have you been married?
Since 2015. I always lose track. Is this 8?
Oh,
no, wait.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
8 years. Wow. Nice. So how did you and Peter meet?
We met through eHarmony.
Oh.
Before all those other apps were in play. I was in a on-again, off-again relationship for like 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I was like in my late 20s and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna meet anyone because I was like at school for like 12 hours a day. And then I was at church, like, and then our church was really small. And I was like, I'm not going to date anyone in here. So I was like, internet is the only way to go. So I joined. I signed up for a 3-month membership. I only had to use it for a month before I found Peter. Yeah.
Hey. Well, and Peter found you too.
Yes.
Yes. So that's I love it. I love stories like this. It's a great connection. Well, you mentioned earlier about your mother, not Sandy, right? I love Sandy. Sandy is a phenomenal human being. She brings such energy to the church. And the energy that she brings to the church is she comes in early and prays. It's like she's setting the tone for the entire morning. That's very impressive. How was it being raised by such an awesome mother? What was that like? And also like the church experience, the faith journey that you had.
Yeah, for sure. Every time I talk about my mom, I not get too emotional. So, well, since this is for a podcast and for those who don't know, my mom was a single mother since I was 4. Our father left us for another woman, made his own family. I never saw him again until a random time in high school when we randomly bumped into him. But other than that, it was only my mom, me, and my little brother, Justin, who's 2 years younger than me. And so just the 3 of us. And she had to, survive and fend for us. So my brother and I both like see her almost like a saint. We know that she has her faults and stuff, but I think just how much she had to sacrifice and give of herself, like she like never brought a man home. It's, like people date and stuff, but she like, I don't even know if she ever, I did ask her, like, did you date? And she says she did, but like she never brought a man home. It was just, sometimes she'd come home late at night, but it was very rare moments. It was always like for us, she would work different kinds of jobs to sustain us. And I just remember her never missing a parent conference, a concert, a recital. Like she never missed, which is amazing. Because for me, like I have a partner and it's hard. Like there are times when I can't even make it to my kids' things. And there's 2 of us. Luckily, one of us can make it. But I'm just like, she was by herself, So we're just always in awe of like how she did that. She was always very open. Like you were talking about how you grew up like with the perfectionist household. It's interesting because with a lot of Asian cultures, the stereotype is like tiger mom and stuff, but she wasn't actually. I did get straight A's, but that's only because I put it on myself. My brother was like a C average student, barely graduated high school. But I don't know, that was just like on me. Although I rarely heard her say like, I'm proud of you or things like that. So I do think a lot of my hunger for verbal affirmation probably comes from that. But I feel like she gave us a very loving home. She was like, I never had that teenage rebellious stage either. I was always able to like tell my mom like everything. We're always really close. Our relationship kind of evolved over the years, like her becoming, so she was kind of more stoic, loving, but stoic. But then once I graduated high school, she became silly. And it was mind boggling because then she would laugh and we're like, what? Like, yeah, like she started becoming or allowing herself to be herself as my brother and I grew into adulthood. And then for church, like, I think we're 4th generation United Methodist Church. And so church has always just been a huge part of our lives since birth. My mom, we went to church every Sunday. She was always super involved. That too, right? Single mother, but she's like involved. She's like, what is it? Like the UMW, right? Like she's involved with that. President of, I don't know, the women's. And then she's like in choir and Sunday school teacher and everything. So it was definitely instilled in us how important going to church is and being Christian. And I feel like she definitely was a model of that. She would share with us like prayers she had. And there were moments where I saw it too. There was one time when my brother was really sick. And I was like maybe in kindergarten or 1st grade, but I recall my brother in bed because he was just like super sick. I don't know how, like what it was, but I remember her just over him, just like crying, but praying, right? Like praying and crying. And yeah, I just have like these images of her, and just she would always tell these stories too. Like there was one in particular, I think it might have been like a few weeks or months after my dad left. And she said we were driving. My brother and I were both in the back seat. And all of a sudden she saw like this bright light shine into her face. And she's like, oh, I can't drive. Because then she started streaming tears. So she had to pull over. And she said it was like a moment where she felt God say, like, you're going to be okay. And then she was just like falling. And I'm like, oh, I always get emotional. So it's like, you know, when she shares stories like that, like we understand like how close she is with Jesus. Yeah. So I know for me, like, it's always like, I feel like I'm not at the level that she's at. And I feel like even though we grew up with a single mother, I feel like I had a pretty easy life. It's funny because my mom makes comments like that too. She's like, your life has been easy. Like by the time I was your age, you know, and then I was like, I know, Mom. But you know how people say like, why does God allow bad things happen to good people kind of stuff? Like, I think I do believe that God doesn't allow anything more than you can handle. It sucks, but to grow in love, to grow empathy, it's hard to do that. Like if you haven't gone through trials and tribulations, and I do wonder, like, my mom is a deeper, complex, like loving human because she went through those things. And for me, I'm like, I wonder if I'm less so because I haven't struggled as much. There are times when I do reflect on those things and wonder, because for me, I do have to be more mindful and intentional to do those things. Whereas for her, I feel like it comes more naturally because of what she has experienced.
Well, it's each of us are different, and each of us have a different faith journey. And so what you have to do is live into the uniqueness and gift of you, right? But what a great example your mother is. And not only for you, but for all of us. She sets a tone. You mentioned Jesus. And so I'm wondering, I want you to sort of picture in your mind Jesus. And what does Jesus look like to you? How would you describe Jesus?
Oh, for sure. I know, man. And like, you might have to say badass.
You can say that.
I imagine someone who is very loving, but also very strong, because I know he would be like social justice oriented, but in a way that's very approachable. For those who are kind of like on the right side of justice, won't feel judgment when you're like with him, that you'd feel like he's just known you your whole life and know you deeply. So I feel like some people might find that intimidating. I know for me, I tend to be an open book. So with me, I feel like I would feel pretty comfortable with him. He'd be a leader, but just like, you just want to be able to like talk with him all night. I would want to listen to him. He would have so much wisdom, but say it in a way that is, that I would understand, that all of us would understand. He would be out there for all of our service projects, like with the homeless, with any community that's like being oppressed. I know he would be standing right with us.
Yeah. Well, how is your understanding? So through your faith journey and through the years of your life, how has your understanding of God changed?
I know for me, like growing up without a father, God was always father. So he was always like, I felt like he was my protector, someone I could go to. Because for me too, like I haven't had, well, I feel like I had actual moments. Like I was at a retreat once where someone was praying over me and was saying like that God sees you and that he named you Joy for a reason and all of this, and like just kind of like prophesizing. And then like I just like broke down crying. So I feel like it's like that. Like God is like always affirming me, like always validating me that I'm good enough. I think the only change now is like, I'm like, okay, God is not necessarily a father. God can be mother as well. But I guess for me, because I had such a strong mother, that God was always just father. But yeah, God hasn't really changed much for me. I think I feel very lucky in that.
Yeah, just from an understanding point, though, it's like also you had the concept of God as father, and now it's like God is mother.
Yeah.
It doesn't, why label God?
I feel very fortunate that I never felt like God was judge and that God sees all the bad things you do. Like I never felt that. And when I think about it, I'm like, why didn't I feel that? And I think it actually might be because I was the Sunday school teacher of our small immigrant church since 9th grade. So since 9th grade, I didn't have a shepherd. I was the shepherd. Can you imagine a 14-year-old?
Wow.
So it was just like me reading the Bible and interpreting. It was probably not the best thing. But I think it did shield me because I know in those, like, that's like the 90s, peak purity culture at other churches. And I remember like my friends at their churches, like they were like destroying their CDs and stuff, right? Like you need to let go of your pagan ways and things like that. And I was like, I'm not breaking up my CDs, but I didn't have like a youth pastor or something that told us like, that's what you're supposed to do, which I'm like grateful for. Because I think that made it so that I didn't have to unpack those things later in life, which I know a lot of my friends did have to unpack a lot. Yeah, I don't know. There's like good and bad to these experiences.
Well, have you seen your relationship with God change in a way differently now that you are a mother?
I think something that's different is sometimes I wonder if I've become too comfortable with I know God just kind of being there. Because I feel like I was much more intentional like in my college years. Well, in college, I joined a Christian club where then I did have pastors and then we had accountability partners or small groups and things like that. So I feel like I did intentional things more, read the Bible, pray, like the disciplines, right? Which I feel like I need to get back to. But I feel like God's just always like in the background, always watching over us. I kind of struggle with that now. Right? Because I'm thinking like how much of it is like performative or kind of like you're supposed to do these things as a Christian and how much of it is like what does it really mean to like be in relationship with God and Jesus? What does that even look like these days? Because I'm in these Facebook groups as well, like progressive Asian American Christians, like things like that. And when I hear people's stories, I'm like, oh yeah, like I resonate with that. Like these disciplines that we were kind of like drilled almost. It's like, where are we now with that? Like knowing like who God is and just with God's grace, where does that leave us?
Well, it's easy to be comfortable with God, but it's also easy to just say, hey, everything's good.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, I'll talk to God just on my drive. Like my eyes aren't closed and stuff, Like
don't have to be.
Yeah, that's why I feel like things are kind of more flexible. But I also don't want to become complacent.
Yes, because it really is easy to become complacent.
Yeah.
Well, as you've heard me speak about gratitude, and I'm not closing my eyes on a gratitude walk. I just walk for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and the entire time I'm giving thanks for the day and all the things that occurred, right? That's a form of meditation and prayer, right? So it is important, though, that we figure out and set aside times for that connection. Because if we don't have that connection...
Right. Yeah. It could just become just in the background and not like intentional.
Right.
Yeah. Like even people, like just because Peter's there all the time doesn't mean we're close. Like we still need that time to like talk and bond.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I believe God yearns for that from us.
Right.
And to be with us. We're talking about faith and your faith journey, and this also now includes Peter as well. Do you share your faith with Wesley and Nori?
We try, like we pray before we eat. A lot of it comes from them, actually, because they went to a Christian preschool. So they have a song before we eat, right? Like a prayer song. I think just us choosing for them to go and then like being at Harmony, I do feel like they're like surrounded by it, right? Like it's just part of our life. But that too, like not becoming complacent, but make things more intentional. I know they ask me to pray sometimes. They'll be like, Mom, or they say, Oma, can you pray today? And I'm okay. Because I think they're curious like what it sounds like from different people. I think they're curious. So then I acquiesce for sure. Like when they ask for those things.
Well, that's also a phenomenal way to learn how to pray, is because you have different people praying. It's like your mother prays differently than you do, than Peter does, than I do, right? And it's like, how interesting that they can receive that and also work it through their minds.
Right. Yeah. They definitely have that curiosity and being able to see all the diversity. Yeah. They are seeing those patterns.
Right. Because they're definitely seeing us.
Yes.
Yeah. You mentioned Harmony Kids, and of course we have the children's moments that happen during worship service. Are you excited about the children's programming that's been going on here?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I always, when y'all announced that you're going to be doing Harmony Kids, I was like, oh, they heard my Google form, or I don't know what, y'all sent a survey once. And I remember putting down for like a bunch of questions, like children's ministry, what do you need? Children's ministry, what more? Children's ministry. Because I knew that it would be hard to stay if there wasn't one for them. Because it's like, how do we, it's hard like in an adult setting, right? Like they do need programming that's tailored to them. So we're so grateful that y'all took up that torch and created this beautiful space for them.
Right. And that sort of was a silver lining of the pandemic, right? Because the pandemic, suddenly we had this break, although we were still Zooming, but it allowed us to create and prepare for the children's programming. So what, let's take a step back. When you and Peter decided to come to Harmony, what brought you here?
It was a Google search because I was definitely looking for an inclusive and affirming church. It was very, even though like I'm like heterosexual and stuff, but it was still important to me that the church loved on everyone and that they also affirmed that this is how God created you to be. It's not a sin. Because I believe God is all loving and that God doesn't make mistakes like that, especially for God's creation that he loves so much, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I did a Google search, for sure we checked out Hollywood UMC. But I know Peter wanted a bit more of a contemporary worship. And so I think it was through the Hollywood UMC website. And yeah, like we loved the worship, we loved the message, we loved what y'all stand for. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah.
Well, thank you for being on the journey with us during this time frame. But then I guess through that, then you invited your mother.
Yes, because she was going to, like Korean United Methodist churches. But I think once we started like having kids, and then I think she is always thinks of church as like a family thing. Like she wants family to be together at a church, like not going to like separate churches. Mm-hmm. And so for her, even though there's a slight language barrier, it's more important for her that like we're all together as a faith community. And she loved the vibe too. Yeah. And I think we've given a lot to the church over the years, like just of our service and our time that I think both of us kind of needed a break as well. So I'm actually very grateful just how y'all set up the volunteer. You make sure that no one's burnt out, everyone, it like rotates. And I love that because it keeps us sustained, keeps us engaged. Right. So, yeah, we're grateful.
I love the aspect when you're talking about family, a family dynamic, because, again, I'm bragging about your mother, but Sandy shows up to church even when you and Peter and the kids aren't here.
Oh, yeah.
Because she feels like this is a family.
And this is her church now.
And her church. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. This is definitely her church. Yeah. She does not mess around.
No, she won't miss just because we're missing. Like, no, she's going to come.
Right?
Yeah, she's always like, why are y'all missing church so much? Yeah.
I love it. That's so funny. Well, she is definitely bedrock. If a couple came to you that's Christian and they were seeking some kind of advice about how do I deepen my relationship with God or with each other, what kind of advice or guidance might you give them? And I mean, you're not a counselor, but it's just, they're just coming to you and saying, Joy, what advice can you give me?
I mean, I think the basic is to find a church community because that's where conversations can start too. Like just what we talk about in the message, like on our drive home, we might like talk about certain points. That's very helpful, because like if you were just like on your own, I guess you could read a book together or something, but it's harder to be in a way disciplined about it. And so, yeah, number one would be like find a church community that you both love and that you can serve at. And then from there, I think it grows organically, depending on like how much the two of you decide to be a part of that church community, because then there's something to talk about.
Right. Well, I think too, what you're sharing is important even for single people to remember, don't be alone.
Mm-hmm.
And find someone within the community to be able to have the conversation with. Because again, that conversation only helps you grow.
Right. And I think it's so important to be able to have a space where you could ask questions and you've got experts who can like help answer them and help you on your faith journey. But I think it's helpful if you find a place where you really connect with the vision and the mission and the beliefs.
Well, it can be really hard, can't it? Especially from an affirming inclusive, because that's what you specifically look, right?
Yeah,
so
that was hard.
Because if you're doing a Google search or some other kind of search, you may be getting a more slanted.
The mega churches that could probably pay for the ads to be higher up on the Google search, I'm sure.
Right.
But when you type in inclusive affirming, it kind of weeds out some of those.
Right.
But then some people don't know like the terms.
Right. Well, and but also just it's not only the messaging, it's like, what's that word going out? Because I feel like sometimes, and I don't know if you've come across this, churches that are affirming or inclusive sometimes may sort of hide that fact.
It was hard. I do recall going through church websites and clicking on like our beliefs, and I would read through to try to read between the lines and like see that. And you're right, it was really hard to see. But I felt like if they omitted it, that they probably don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, like I was looking for churches where it like stated it. I think I knew inclusive, but I didn't know the word affirming. Mm-hmm. So I forgot what words I used, but eventually it got me to where I needed to go. But I did actually dig through and read through like our beliefs and things like that.
Yeah, that's one of my learning lessons as a pastor is having to change from a welcoming church to affirming church. Right?
There's a lot of welcoming churches.
Right. And so that was a huge shift of saying, oh, well, we already were affirming, but we hadn't used that word. Just so important that, well, as followers of Jesus, we are not ashamed of being followers of Jesus, are we?
Right.
And so, and I think that's important is that we share that good news of affirmation and inclusivity so that everyone knows how much they're loved.
It's so funny because on like threads I would read for things, people would be like, well, I'm not a Christian, but like y'all are not following the Jesus that I've read, you know? And I'm like, yeah, like it's so frustrating. I'm like, Jesus would not stand for this. Like it boggles my mind. Just, I was like, what? Like, are we reading the same New Testament? Like Jesus would totally be for the LGBTQ plus community. Like, you know, like the corporations taking over everything. He'd be against that. Like, what are we doing? Like he would be speaking out like against all those things that are happening right now. And yeah.
Well, it's it's important for us to speak out, having Christ with us, but Christ working through us, right? Because we're all God's beloved children. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the tough part too. Like God loves all of us, like even those who hate on others, God still loves.
That's right. Yeah. All right, so I have a fun question to end this thing with. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. So if you were on a deserted island by yourself without Wi-Fi capability,
oof.
What 3 things would you carry with you?
Are these physical things or metaphorical things?
It could be whatever. If you could bring 3 things with you, what would they be?
It's the way you said carry with you. I was like, wait, do you also? I don't know. I'm so practical. I know I love water. So I definitely would want like a water bottle or probably a water purification device. That's super practical. I guess I would want, I have 3 values. You know, when you're at those like trainings or whatever, they make you like go through, have a list of values and you kind of like whittle it down to 3. But one of mine is gratitude. So I would want to carry gratitude with me. If you're curious, the other ones are balance and equity. And And the third thing.
So you got a water bottle. You've got the value.
Yes. Gratitude, just because I don't want to go crazy or something, because I'm by myself. I want to just, even though I'm by myself, just be grateful for where I am and keep a sound mind. That's why I said gratitude.
Yes.
And I think the third thing would be practical too, something so I can make fire. I don't know, because I'd run out of matches. Yeah.
Or you can just have endless supply of matches.
Oh, is that allowed?
Sure. Yeah,
I'm survival mode. Yeah.
Well, it is wonderful to be able to spend some time with you, Joy. It is a blessing to be with you and with your family, Peter, Wesley, and Nori, your mom, Sandy, your brother, Justin. It brings me joy, and it's an honor just to be a pastor for your family.
And we're so happy that Harmony exists and that you're here leading us.
Well,
thank you.
You are an important part of the leadership. And so thank you for everything that all of you are doing. So I just want to say thank you to our listening audience. It is always a joy to be connecting with you. These are phenomenal opportunities for us to be in conversation with others about their faith journey. And so we look forward to connecting with you again soon. Peace.
Thanks for listening to Our Story, the podcast, with your host, Pastor Mark Stevenson. This month's guest was Joy Min, and this episode was recorded and mixed by me, Donna Miller, with production support by Jase Lucas. Don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe to Our Story, the podcast, so you never miss a new episode. You're listening to the Harmony Podcast Network, sponsored in part by Hollywood United Methodist Church. Find us on Instagram at Harmony_TLC and on Facebook at HarmonyTL. We'll see you next month for a conversation with Jase Lucas. Until then, as Pastor Mark likes to say, peace.